On your people on your tours have come off like with scratches, what you're saying?
Thousands of them. Scratches, bruise marks, bite marks, everything. Around the neck, bruises around the neck, like grabbed. We have lots of knockouts. The scratches, the bruises, the bite marks, people being shoved, kicked, punched, thrown against walls. Over 3,000 eyewitness accounts now, just since 1999.
Hey y'all, welcome to Culture Cult. My name is Marie. I am the host of the show, and this is a show where we are trying to learn about every country in the world. And today we're kicking off season 6 with our first country, Scotland. And right now, when I'm recording this, we're about to enter spooky season. It's about to be October, and I wanted to give you all a spooky little episode because Scotland is super haunted. Let's just be for real. And so I actually found a ghost hunter tour guide. His name's Jamie from the famous City of the Dead ghost tours in Edinburgh. And you're in for a treat today because we're talking about the real story behind the famous McKenzie Poltergeist that happens in Edinburgh. We also talk about how a homeless man accidentally kicked off a haunting that has still been going on for decades. And we're talking about witches. We're talking about people beheading skeletons. It's creepy, it's spooky, and it's perfect for October. So we're starting off the episode by talking about some of the celebrities that go on the tours, including Matthew Lillard. I feel like I'm saying his name wrong. He's the guy from Scream. And Jamie actually did a tour with him, and he said he was scared shitless. So let's get into the episode. I hope this is a good start to your spooky season this October. You're like one of the top tours, maybe if not the top tour in Edinburgh. You're probably the one where you get a lot of celebrities.
Yeah, we've done a lot of private tours and things for people. Yeah, it's just second nature. Through other stuff, I've met a lot of famous people, so it doesn't faze me at all. It's just one of these things. Just normal people, really. I never thought in a million years that I would meet Matthew Lillard, let alone do a tour for him. So that was a special one because he screamed like a little bitch. Yeah. He hates horror stuff. That's what people don't realize is he hates horror stuff. He said it's the suspense he hates.
But he was in a horror movie.
But when you're filming a movie though, it's totally different. It's all segments. It's all segments and it's all the stuff around you. So you don't see the finished product until obviously it's premiered. And when it's edited and things like that. So the scenes are just a minute long, 2 minutes long, and it's different. But he really didn't like the suspense in the dark. He was really, really, really uneasy. I had one of the staff members jump out with the Scream mask on at the very end. So it was like I was waiting like 20 years to that. Since I saw Scream for the first time, I loved it. So yeah, he signs the mask for us. So that's in the display up there with him. Yeah, and a photograph of them trying to lick my ear for some reason. Yeah.
I do get the suspense part. I feel like on your tours, that's probably something you'll add in, like how to do good storytelling and like create that creepy vibe.
Well, the company was obviously set up originally to document what we called the McKenzie Poltergeist. But Jan, the owner, he has always said he's always had to let the guides have free range of basically non-scripted. None of the guides are scripted. So we're storytellers, like you say. It's a storytelling tour. It's not a traditional kind of ghost tour, with theatrics and all that, because we don't need to have the theatrics. We have got a very active, well-documented poltergeist or, something to that extent. So to be a scripted tour guide in a situation like that, when something can kick off in seconds, you've got to be able to, so yeah, we're unique. And the fact is we're not scripted. So it still makes it personal. So we can, chop and change. And we take you to our locations and we talk to you. That's it, and so it's very much storytelling, and the storytelling brings the whole place to life. That's why it's difficult to do kind of tour stuff without actually being in the locations. During lockdown, we thought about doing an interactive tour. There's a lot of places doing that, but you just cannot get the atmosphere. That's the thing. Yeah, you need the atmosphere of the vaults or the graveyard in the actual Black Mausoleum. You cannot replicate that, and that's a huge, because both of these locations are unique to us. So that's what the tour is surrounded by and, based on. So it's very difficult to portray that without actually being there.
Yeah. I've been to Edinburgh a long time ago. And Joy, you've been there too. Like, why do you think Edinburgh is so haunted? Is it more haunted than other cities?
Allegedly, it's one of the most haunted places in the world, but there's a lot of history, going thousands of years. There's always been settlements on, where the castle is now, so yeah, history, like York in England, York again is one of the most haunted places in the world, again, because it's got a huge history. And obviously a lot of stuff happened over the years and centuries. So, that adds to the, a lot of murder and a lot of bad things and like everywhere else,
Yeah, but I felt it there. I don't know, Joy, if you felt the energy, but like,
I mean, I've felt the energy since I was a kid. Like, I've tried to tell you the stories that I've had since I was a kid, and apparently I've always seen ghosts so I've always felt like that little sense that something is a little more haunted than it should be.
Why did you get into this? Like, what was your first ghost story? Did you have like an encounter? Like, this is a very niche job.
I mean, I've always been interested in ghosts. I was younger. I think I first got into horror. The very first movie I watched, which terrified me, was the Hammer horror, Prince of Darkness from Christopher Lee. And I remember watching it, and I was terrified. But since then, I started getting into sort of ghosts, and I kept collecting lots and lots of books about ghosts. Any ghost book I could find, I would collect. And I started reading about different cases, and I got into poltergeists eventually, like Borley Rectory, the Bell Witch, Enfield, Sao Paulo, all over the world, the German one as well. So I'd also had this interest in poltergeists. I had read a book in 2001 called The Ghost That Haunted Itself by Jan Andrew Henderson. And I read it, and it was about Edinburgh, about Greyfriars. So I was like, wow. Now, at that time, I never thought, I mean, I have got in my office at home, I've got my history report from fourth year. So I would have been 14 years old, my school history report. And it's a big F, a big fail. The comment from the teacher is he shows no interest to me. He shows no interest to the class. He's a waste of my time and his. That was it. I showed no interest in history whatsoever. So I read this book and it was interesting because I was in poltergeist. So I thought, I'm going to go through Edinburgh and check this Greyfriars place out. Not thinking back then in a million years that I would then one day work for the tour company I was reading about, and then let alone be manager of the tour company that I was reading about. I never wanted to be a tour guide because I hate people. I do. I generally hate people. I was a drummer. I was a professional drummer before I came out, but a shoulder injury stopped me playing drums, so I had to. Then my Charlotte, business partner of Jan, Charlotte was Jan's business partner, so she was manager of City of the Dead. And to get me out of the house, she got me into the vaults, first of all, because she said, she thought I'd be interested in it. And she knew if I'd got an interest in something, I would then want to know more about it. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of get out of the house, look at this place, this is cool. So I went in and sure enough, I was captivated by the vault. As soon as I saw them, I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I started researching about it. Again, I started buying lots and lots of books about it, and lots of books about things. I would then go to Charlotte, Charlotte is a death historian. She's practiced in funeral practices and burial stuff. So she was like, why don't you become a tour guide for City of the Dead? So eventually I decided to come on board with City of the Dead and do my trial as a tour guide. I've been with the company, 18 years now? 2007, I started with the tour company. So
wow.
Yeah.
So like your love of stories and ghosts surpasses your hate for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's still a bit weird. Usually, I mean, that was the worst fear, is standing in front of people and talking. That was my worst fear about being a tour guide, because being a drummer, I would have a wall of drums and metal, there was a barrier. I didn't have to speak to people. Nobody recognizes drummers, so it's great. Well, apart from famous ones, but
mm-hmm.
So to actually stand there and, I was never into history, although I liked history, it was always certain parts. So, getting into that and then now into history and, all the archival stuff and all the research I've done over the years. And it's a very strange thing where I am now. So it was nothing in particular. I'd always have that love of ghosts, but it was never in my career plan. Absolutely not.
So you didn't grow up seeing any ghosts? It was you just fell in love with the stories?
Never. I've seen a few strange things. I've never seen a ghost. I've seen shadows and, things move that I could probably never physically see a ghost.
Wait, even on your tours?
No.
So you've never been like really scared on one of the tours or really spooked?
No, I don't get scared. I spent a lot of time in the vaults on my own over the years. I spent a lot of time. Like I would go in overnight and do work in the vaults overnight. If the staircases need painted or doorways need painted and pick up litter. So I'd go in at like 10 o'clock at night and come out at like, 7, 8 in the morning.
I couldn't.
So, it's just brilliant. It's so quiet. It's just like, I know every sound in that place. It's the sounds I don't recognize that kind of throw me off.
Hey everyone, my name is Alexandria and I run a food blog called The Foreign Fork where I'm cooking one meal from every country in the world. You might remember me from the Culture Cult episode titled Travel Story Getting Cancelled by All of Australia, and that is a true story worth listening to if you haven't heard it yet. So if you haven't, go check out that episode. Today's Culture Cult episode is on Guyana, and so I'm very excited to talk about that because I wanted to tell you about my experience cooking one of the most popular Guyanese dishes for my blog. When I was cooking Guyana, I did a lot of research beforehand, and all of my research kept pointing me in one direction, which was to make pepper pot. Pepper pot is a Guyanese dish that is the pride and joy of the country. It's made by cooking a combination of beef and pork together with a really unique Guyanese ingredient called kasreep. Kasreep is this thick brown sauce, and it's made from cassava. The kind of cassava that's used to make kasreep is really bitter, and without being processed, it actually contains cyanide. The cassava is grated, and then the juices are squeezed out of it, which are then boiled with sugar, and the resulting product is this really thick, molassesy textured sauce that is this deep black color. And the color really threw me off at first, but it does make for a delicious flavor in the stew. I bought my kasreep from Amazon, which was the only place I was able to find it, but you can also find YouTube videos on how to make it at home if you're willing to risk the cyanide. Once you have your kasreep, it's time to get started. So to actually make the pepper pot, beef and pork are stewed together for a few hours in a pot alongside spicy pepper, cinnamon sticks, cloves, thyme, onion, garlic, celery, orange peels, kasreep, and more. Now, here's the thing that I really am excited to tell you about pepper pot, which is that it has a super unique quality because it's best when eaten a few days after making it. And the kasreep that's in the pepper pot acts as a natural preservative for the stew, meaning that you can continue to eat it long after a normal stew would have gone bad. So it's actually very common to leave the stew on the stove at room temperature for up to 2 weeks at a time. And all you need to do every day is reheat it to a boil for a few minutes every day to make sure that it stays good. Isn't that crazy? Pepper pot is a national dish for Guyana, and it was so fun to experiment with it and make it at home. I'm not an expert on Guyanese cuisine, but I did have so much fun learning about this unique dish. You can find my recipe on foreignfork.com or follow me at The Foreign Fork on Instagram or TikTok to see what other recipes I experiment with from around the world. Put some culture in your kitchen this week.
So what Jamie does is definitely not a normal job, guys. Like, he spends part of his time in the Edinburgh Vaults, and I've been in these vaults. I was there, it was a long time ago, but I went to Edinburgh, and they take you down to these vaults, and it is actually very relaxing if you like caves. You know, it is very quiet and relaxing down there, but that's also because I was at the tour guide. I was with like 20 other people and we had flashlights. Jamie goes down to these vaults alone. So let me tell you about these vaults. These vaults are built under a bridge of about 19 arches. They're beneath the South Bridge, and it was constructed in the late 18th century. And they were supposed to be used for merchants and tradespeople. But then, I mean, Jamie will explain it later in the story in the podcast, but the vaults weren't really built for trading goods, and so people started to abandon them, and then it became really, really dark and scary down there. Like, that's where all like the black market was. Families lived down there in tiny, dark, damp rooms with no sanitations, lots of criminals, you know, a lot of illegal drinking dens, a lot of gambling, a lot of smuggling, just a lot of crime mixed in with people who were like the poorest of the poor, who could not live anywhere but these dark vaults. So a place that was like supposed to be like a cool market ended up being like the black market, and it was under these vaults. And so it's supposedly haunted, and this is where he works. There's people hears children's voices, women singing, people end up with scratches on their arms. But honestly, when I was down there, it actually was kind of relaxing. So I do get what Jamie's saying. Like, if, you know, he's not much of a people person, he explains, so it must be kind of relaxing to work down there. But you have to remember, he works down there alone in these dark, damp vaults. So that's what he is describing here. And I definitely would recommend visiting them if you ever go to Edinburgh. Yeah, I wonder if the ghosts like know because you're not scared.
I think it basically comes down to, in your life, you're either one born with it, you can either have that as your head, or if you look at it psychologically, when kids are born, obviously they're a blank canvas. You know, kids learn from parents and peers. Over the years, parents will always tell their children that there's no such thing as monsters, no such thing as ghosts. You know, don't always tell you, go back to sleep. There's no such thing as ghosts. So eventually you become, you know, programmed to block it out. But I think if it gets to a point in your life, I'm 46 now, I've never seen a ghost. I'm never going to see one now. You've either got it, or you don't. I think is what it simply comes down to. And all these things as well, we just don't have science available to us just now to prove or disprove. Just now. Maybe one day in the future, the way science goes, absolutely, maybe will, but there's still no definite proof, either way. It's still belief. That's what it comes down to, is belief. But there's a lot of arguments, especially in children, is, when you have these children communicating with grandpa who died 20 years before this child was born. And this child can tell you things that grandpa said, or if something's been missing for so long and the child says, grandpa says it's in this box. Stuff like that is like, okay, there's something there. And imaginary friends for children. Mm-hmm. How many of these friends are actually imaginary just because we can't see them? There's certainly a lot of studies still, but there's still no proof either way, so I think it's you either can or you can. You're either channeled in or not. That's it.
But do you believe in ghosts? Because I know you said you haven't seen one, but do you believe it?
You can't not. Even though I've never seen it, I've seen a lot of strange things happen to people, i.e. scratches just suddenly appear on their face and things like that on a tour. I cannot explain that. And science cannot explain. I don't care what you say. Science cannot explain that. Psychologists can say that you do it to yourself. Their hands were nowhere near their face when these scratches appeared. And they're not human scratches. They're like free wells. They're like cat scratches. Mm. You do not scratch yourself like that. You cannot. So it's a phenomenon. That's why it's classed as a phenomenon, because science can't explain it. It happened, but you can't say how it happened reasonably.
People on your tours have come off like with scratches, what you're saying?
Thousands of them. Yeah. Scratches, bruise marks, bite marks, everything. Around the neck, bruises around the neck, like grabbed. We have lots of knockouts, not faints. A faint, you start feeling dizzy, you start feeling, oh, you're going to sit down. You get warning of a faint. Your body's going to like, But a knockout is like a hypnotist that's come up and just went, sleep. We could talk like that, something bang on the ground. No warning at all. But the scratches, the bruises, the bite marks, people being shoved, kicked, punched, thrown against walls. Yeah, over 3,000 eyewitness accounts now. Over since 1999. Yeah.
Can you define what's the difference between a ghost and a poltergeist?
Well, poltergeist is more energy, isn't it? It's more energy, more rather than a form. A ghost is classed as the traditional, all white or see-through, it's moaning, just moving, like a spectre. Whereas a poltergeist is no physical form. It's all energy. It's kinetic energy, and it's just basically
a poltergeist gets more energy than a ghost.
I think it's a different form of energy. To actually, obviously, when you see thinking of transparent ghosts or, apparitions and things like that, they walk through walls and things like that. So there's no physical form. There's no energy there. Whereas a poltergeist can move things, it can physically touch, it can set fires, it can throw things, move things, stack things, which is beyond human and able to do things like that. That's a different form of energy. Yeah.
Would that be like a demon?
Well, there's obviously been studies into that, prepubescent children, between the ages of, say, 10 and 15. It's always centered around that. Even like in the movie Poltergeist, and poltergeists have always had epicenter, one person, the energy comes from. So this is why I don't think this thing in Greyfriars is a poltergeist at all. It's got the poltergeist traits. It can touch, it can scratch, it can, things like that. But it doesn't have an epicenter, not one person that it feeds on. So is it a collective? This is when the pheromone theory comes into play. Pheromone theory is basically it's a collective energy from people who are feeling different states while on the tour. Some get really frightened, some don't. Some are in wonderment, some are, somewhere else. So all this collective energy comes together to eventually it just, it explodes. And this could cause certain the collapses and, just a burst of energy. How that does scratches and things, that's beyond my realm of science or understanding, to be fair. Does it attract a certain person? Again, this is completely random. The attacks, as we call them, or interactions with people on the tour, it's completely random. There's no uniform to it. No. Okay. Time as well. It could be weeks. Sometimes we can go months without anything happening at all.
Okay, before we get into the story about the McKenzie Poltergeist, I wanted to explain a little bit about the difference between a ghost, a poltergeist, and a demon. And I have our friend ChatGPT helping me. So, Jamie, if this is wrong, don't yell at me. It's chat. So, a ghost it's a lingering spirit or energy of someone who was once alive. It haunts a place that it was tied to their past. So you'll feel cold spots or temperature drops. There's shadowy figures, there's footsteps, there's whispering, maybe someone calling your name. It's the feeling of being watched or unexplained scents of perfume, tobacco, flowers. Objects may move slightly, but not violently. And a lot of times pets, especially cats, will stare and react to nothing. So interactive, but it's more like a recording playing itself. Now, a poltergeist is chaotic, noisy haunting, often tied to a living person rather than a dead one. This will be explained by objects being thrown, stacked, or moved aggressively. Now, loud knocks, bangs, or footsteps from nowhere, doors and cabinets slamming, fires starting inexplicably, which will happen later on in this podcast, and that'll be a poltergeist for sure. Often, poltergeists intensify around one person, usually around a teenager or a stressed individual. Later on, me and my cousin Julia will actually be telling our own ghost stories, and I definitely had a poltergeist because I was a teenager and it was throwing things around. So that makes sense. Okay, so now a demon. A demon is a non-human, never alive entity. It's often tied to religious or dark spiritual lore. The typical behavior of a demon is 3 scratches, claw marks, mocking the Trinity, growling, guttural voices, mocking laughter, sulfur, rotting meat smells, sleep paralysis with a presence. I know a lot of people who've experienced that actually. Nightmares, violent thoughts, or personality changes. Objects levitating, not just moving. If a demon has hosted with someone, maybe they are feeling exhausted, they feel a lot of dread, they're depressed without a cause. The demon will also mimic voices of loved ones or children. That's so creepy. Or they come in shadowy forms that are crawling towards you, or they're horned or faceless. These extreme cases can escalate to possession or physical harm. So just wanted to kind of explain that a little bit before we get into the McKenzie Poltergeist story. Walk us through the McKenzie poltergeist. Like, you following it since 1999?
1999, yeah, that's when, back then, the Covenanter's prison area of Edinburgh, of Greyfriars, was open to the public, people walk through. And there was a homeless guy who broke into the McKenzie Mausoleum, the McKenzie family mausoleum, where Sir George McKenzie of Roseball is interred along with members of his family and others. That's in the main graveyard. That's the dome-shaped one. That's his burial mausoleum. There was a homeless guy in 1998 who broke into that tomb at the back. Not malicious. He just wanted somewhere to sleep. It was a windy and stormy night. And he allegedly went downstairs into the burial chamber where there was 4 coffins, and he stood on a fake floor. There was a thin slate floor. And as he fell through that floor, he fell into a big pile of bones, which were other interments. And he grabbed a coffin as he went down, and one of the coffins came and cracked open. So that was that. He ran out. But literally a week later, there started to be reports coming out from people within Greyfriars in an area that's about 200 yards away from that mausoleum. And it's called the South Yard, which is the Covenanter's prison. It's a long stretch of land that's coming off Greyfriars. There was reports coming out of people coming away with strange marks on them, and people felt uneasy. Over a few months, there was 11 ambulances called for people who were found unconscious in this area over the space of 3 months. So this takes us into 1999. And there was, the local media had picked up on this. People were going to the media saying, I went to Greyfriars and my hair was pulled, or I was coming out looking like I had these scratches on my arms or my neck. So the media kind of picked it up. And at the same time, my boss, Jan, he sort of saw this in the local media, and he lived right next to the graveyard at that point. So he thought, this sounds really good. This is a good idea for a book. It didn't have a name. It was just known as The Strange Occurrences in Greyfriars. So this went on. There was more reports coming out, and the media then decided to organise an exorcism to be done, because that makes a great story. Now, it's a Scottish Presbytery graveyard, so they decided to get someone associated with the Catholic, obviously it's Catholic that does the exorcisms. Totally different, not a different religion, but it's different, a different era. Don't let that get in the way of the story. So there was an exorcism organised by a local medium who done exorcisms as a side job, I believe, called Colin Grant. Very well respected man. He was a well respected medium and clairvoyant. So he came in with the cameras and the media were there, and he went around Greyfriars and done the blessings. He collapsed in the prison area, and he said, "This is too strong. I can't do this. It will kill me." This is all still in the media. If you do a Google search of Colin Grant, Edinburgh, you'll get all the media reports from the newspapers. So that was done, and he was taken out. He was carried out by his son, and about a week later, he was given a private reading at home to a client. Present in the room were him, his client, his wife, and his son. And he was doing the reading, and he kind of stopped, and he looked down, and he just silent, and seemingly just went sheet white, and he said, "Greyfriars, there's no good news, there's just bad." And his heart stopped, and he dropped dead. So the son then claimed the Greyfriars had killed his father. Of course, the media just went.
So I was looking this up. Colin Grant was a spiritualist, medium, and minister who became notably involved at the Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh. In November 1999, he performed an exorcism at the graveyard. It was specifically around the McKenzie Poltergeist. And as Jamie was saying, he couldn't do the blessings and he actually collapsed. And then just a few weeks later, after this exorcism, Colin Grant passes away from a heart attack while conducting another seance. So I mean, as he was saying, his son and other paranormal enthusiasts speculate that his death was actually linked to the forces to the McKenzie Poltergeist that happened at Greyfriars.
Greyfriars kills an exorcist. So that was insane. The media attention it was creating was just crazy. There was media from all over the place. So at that point, the council who owned Greyfriars, they decided to lock the gates of the Covenanters prison, stop people going in. There wasn't just that, we've got to be honest here. It wasn't just because of these strange occurrences. It was a lot to do with things were changing in the city. There was unfortunately a lot more drug use. That was a kind of hidden off area. So it could have been an attraction to the bad behaviour. Mm-hmm. So the council basically just went, "That's it, they're locked. Stop. Problem solved." So that was it. So Jan, my boss, then decided, "I'm writing this book. This is fast. This is just getting good." He was like, "I need to be able to go in there, take people in there, or talk to people who've been in there. I want to finish this. This can't be finished." So he approached the council. He said, "Look, even access for an hour a day or something." Like, no. They went, "No, it's locked." So he had to think, what do I do? He came up with an idea as how to get people from all over the world, different religions, different backgrounds, different beliefs. How do we get these people to see what their experiences were in this place so I can carry on my research? But then what do we give? What makes the council tick more than anything? Money. Why don't I get these people to come in? They'll be our guinea pigs and they'll pay us for the privilege to possibly be attacked by a poltergeist. Perfect. So he went back to the council and he said, "Right, okay, this is public liability insurance. This is my name on it. And I want to take people in there and I'll give you X amount of the profits in the year, whatever. We'll work out a deal. So that'll be payment. We'll also take the old gatehouse and we'll make that an office. So that's 2 rents you'll get for somewhere you won't be using." So of course they threw the keys up. "How many do you want?" And that was it. We've had the only and sole access since 1999. We've documented what then Jan went on to call for the book. He needed a name and he called it the McKenzie Poltergeist for the book. Now, it's not called the McKenzie Poltergeist after any particular McKenzie. There's like 14 Mackenzies buried in that mausoleum in the main graveyard. He called it the McKenzie Poltergeist after the mausoleum because he thinks that was the trigger point. It was the homeless guy breaking into the mausoleum that triggered these occurrences to happen in the prison area, which is 200 yards away. How, I don't know. But he needed to call it something for his book. And he thinks that event was the trigger because there wasn't anything before then. There was always a little bit of superstition about the area, but so that's why he called it the McKenzie Poltergeist. And that was for his book. And that was the book that I read in 2001. I was fascinated by this case because it was so well documented.
I'm sorry, I'm smiling. I'm just like, this homeless guy. He just like, he just like put off a chain of events. Like he was just trying to get some sleep.
Yeah, trying to get sleep, yeah.
Like that's the worst night for him. He fell through the floor into bones. The coffin falls on him and he upsets a myriad of spirits, it seems like.
So like, well, how did he fall through a floor if it was burial? Well, you're right. See, before the McKenzie Mausoleum was put there in 1687, there was a tomb there before. It was an enclosure, so it was a square enclosure with no roof. It was the Foresters, which is funny, the Foresters of Corstorphine in Edinburgh, which is obviously my surname.
Oh, yeah.
Their burial chamber, their burial vault was there before the McKenzie Mausoleum. So their family had finished. So they moved because Sir George wanted that exact place for his tomb. He saw it before he died. He had a design purely because the view over Edinburgh from there was prime location, and that's why he wanted his tomb there over his city. The church wasn't as big as it is now. The view was great. So they moved the Forester of Corstorphine tomb to the lawn. But they didn't dig the bodies up. They left the bodies. So what they did is they put a thin slate floor to cover the burial chamber of the Foresters of Corstorphine, and they built the McKenzie Mausoleum on top of it. So that's why in the coffins downstairs, they were on plinths. So the plinths weren't actually on the slate floor. They were held up by a bricked plinth. So the coffins were on top of that. So the weight wasn't on the slate. So when the homeless guy went down, that was what he hit, was the thin slate floor. And that's when he fell into the burial chamber of the Foresters of Corstorphine. I'd say about 28 people in there, in that burial vault.
That's where he fell.
Yeah, that's where he fell into a big pile of bones.
Upset so many spirits.
Has anyone ever found who the homeless guy was?
No, I don't believe so. No.
Like, I want to know his point of view of being like, what happened that sad night that his sleep would never
Probably
be.
dead. Probably got haunted to death. Yeah. That was his punishment. Although the homeless guy wasn't in there maliciously. Unfortunately, in 2003, they broke into it maliciously. It was a group of teenagers they kicked the front door in. They ended up severing the head off one of the corpses and kicking the head around. You may wonder why you had to sever the head off a corpse. One of the bodies that was in the coffin that was damaged by the homeless guy, when it fell over, the top was cracked, so they had to replace the top. But it was just wood sitting over it. The body hadn't fully decomposed in that coffin. It was still a leathery skin. It was almost mummified. So the skin was holding it all together, still had hair. Again, this was world media. It was a 15-year-old boy, local boy, who went in, and again, he took the head off the corpse and was playing football with it and things in the graveyard.
I'm sorry, but the McKenzie Mausoleum, these poor bodies. Okay, first of all, a homeless man accidentally falls through the floor and lands on all of these corpses and all of these skeletons and disrupts them. And then you have this asshole 15-year-old boy who comes in and saws the head off one of the corpses and then starts playing football with his head in the graveyard. This is wild. Like, of course, this place is haunted now. Like, so much happened to this McKenzie family's mausoleum in like the span of like 20 years. Like, homeless man falls through, destroys your whole mausoleum, and then some asshole 15-year-old saws off the head of a corpse. I would like to know his name and if we're all safe, because he sounds like a making of a serial killer. But also, I've said this in many episodes about Scotland and in the UK in general. I don't know what's going on there, but the teenagers there are fucking punks. They're so scary. I don't know what's going on and why the UK is like breeding all these like scary teenagers. But when he said that, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, the teenagers in the UK are super like angsty and angry and scary. And I always feel like I'm going to get robbed by them. So is this just like a Scottish teen thing to like take off heads of corpses and play football? Or is this actually like the making of a serial killer? I don't know. If y'all have been to the UK, I would love to hear your opinion on if you also think the teenagers are scary there. Thank you.
We did find after that in 2003, there was a lot more reports of interactions in the prison area on the tours at night. There was a lot more interactions, a lot more scratches, a lot more people getting knocked down, thrown about, things. So again, it's just coincidence, or, it's definitely a strange case.
Wow, that is horrifying. And yeah, I would be pissed if that was my ghost or my body.
Awesome.
But there is, this is one of the main things. Is there's a lot of people's public speculation since the book came out. A lot of speculation that it's the spirit of Sir George McKenzie of Rose Hall, Lord Advocate of Scotland, during Charles II, because he was called Bloody McKenzie after his death. I have to say, He gets, it's allegedly his spirit that's running about, and I can probably assure you 3,000% it's got nothing to do with Sir George McKenzie of Bruce. The man wasn't as evil as all these. Some people will tell you that, he was murdering women and children for their beliefs, and they're absolute garbage.
Okay, so Sir George McKenzie, again, according to ChatGPT, because Jamie is going to tell us why his history is wrong, but I just want to tell you what people are saying about Sir George McKenzie as like common knowledge. And then Jamie will tell us who he actually was in history. But according to chat, Sir George McKenzie was a really bad guy and one of the history's most feared men in Edinburgh. And he earned his terrifying nickname because he was persecuting Covenanters, which are like a Scottish Presbyterian group that resisted the government-imposed religious practices. It is said that McKenzie arrested, tortured, and imprisoned hundreds in the 17th century. Most of these prisoners were held at the Covenanters prison at Greyfriars under brutal conditions. Those who refused to swear loyalty to the king could face execution that were often public and cruel. So that's what common knowledge of Sir George McKenzie is on the internet, but I want Jamie to explain the actual history about Sir George McKenzie.
Yes, so George McKenzie worked his entire life in law. He studied in Italy, studied in France, he studied in Scotland, and he made his way up through the ranks of law in Scotland in the 1600s to get to King's Advocate, one under the king. He made the laws in Scotland. He was that trusted. He was respected. Now, at that time in Scotland was during the killing times, the National Covenant movement, when the monarchy were trying to anglicise the Scottish Church by introducing bishops. Basically, the king, they thought, well, we're the head of the Church in England, why are we not head of the Church of Scotland? So we saw ourselves as the main vessel to God. We didn't need bishops to speak for us. We didn't need these, clergy to talk for us because we spoke to God directly as Scottish presbyteries. So we were basically we said, no, God save the king, but do not take our religion because you're not the head of the Church of Scotland. You don't do that, not here. So if you take up arms against us, we will take up arms against you. And that basically started 50 years of killing. It was the National Covenant movement. Now, the Covenant was a parchment piece of paper that was sent around Scotland, like a petition of the day. People signed it to say, God save the king. But, we will take up arms if you force us. That went around. So the first one was signed in Greyfriars, 1638. It was signed in Greyfriars, the very first one. So that led on to the battles and stuff. This is where the Covenanters' prison comes from, is that section of the graveyard was used to house 1,200 prisoners after the battle of Bothwell Brig in 1679. So that's where it gets its name from. But George McKenzie he was Lord Advocate at the time. Now, you got to remember, people say he killed thousands of Covenanters. No, he never. He never killed a single one of them. These people, in the eyes of the law at the time, because they were against the king, it was high treason. You were with the king or against the king. They weren't against the king, they just didn't want him being the head of the Church in Scotland. But it was high treason. Now, high treason always carried the punishment of hung, drawn, and quartered. That was it. There was no other punishment. Unless you were noble, you could then just be beheaded. But the hung, drawn, and quartered, basically Braveheart, the end of William Wallace, he was hung, drawn, and quartered. That was the sentence. Now, these people had already been found guilty in a court of law. Okay? George McKenzie, as Lord Advocate, being a judge, of course, he had to pass sentence on somebody who'd already been found guilty in a court of law. There was only one sentence for that, and that was hung, drawn, and quartered. He had to do his job. He couldn't be seen lenient towards the Covenanters. His personal feelings couldn't come into it. If he was against the king, or he was found to be lenient against them, it would him that would be executed next because he'd be against the king. He would lose his life over it. He was a highly intelligent man, but he was no mass murderer. He doesn't deserve the rep he gets now. He was doing his job. People don't remember about George McKenzie is he was the one that started the abolition of witch trials in Scotland because he disagreed with the use of torture being used in a confession because it was only compliant. It wasn't the truth. Because people will tell you anything under the duress of pain to stop the pain. And he was the first person to bring it up. And because of that, the witch trials ended up being abolished in Scotland. So for people to then say that he was then torturing these Covenanters, unbelievable. And no, he didn't. he's buried in Greyfriars because he was a presbytery. He was a Covenanter, but he had a job to do, and that was Lord Advocate, and that was to preside over these cases. The only thing he had to do with the Covenanters' prison in Greyfriars is he signed the paperwork to allow it to be used as a makeshift prison for 4 months. He never visited the prisoners in Greyfriars. He never interacted with them at all. He just signed the paperwork. But unfortunately, there are some people who will have you believe that he was there murdering women and children, cutting their heads off, spiking them on the gates and stuff. Bloody George McKenzie. But yeah, George McKenzie gets a bad rep from people who have never researched a thing about him. So they've read a website and that's it. It drives me nuts.
And then you have a 15-year-old cutting off his head like 300, 400 later.
Well, yeah. To be fair, there's 4 coffins, and one of them was beheaded. Yeah, whether it was for George McKenzie or not, I can't comment. But I personally do not believe that it was George McKenzie's head. It wasn't George McKenzie's coffin. One of the heads. It was one of the McKenzie family, certainly. And it was desecrated and it was horrific. Yeah, again, that made national news as well.
I did have one more question outside of the McKenzie story. So I remember when I did like a history tour there, they talked about Prince's Street Garden. Do you know any of the history of like how that became? I don't know, like it's messed up, like how people think it's a pretty garden, but it has a dark story.
Well, it's well fertilized, put it that way. Yeah. And it was also the main sewer. It was the main drinking water and the main sewer. Because Edinburgh built on the 7 hills, that's why we've got the valleys. And the valleys running from the Royal Mile, one of them goes into what is now Prince Street Gardens, which was, all this, everything off the pavements, all the slopes, all the sewage, it would all run down into the Norloch. Yeah.
If you've been to Edinburgh, you've definitely been to Prince's Park. It is absolutely stunning. And you wouldn't know that was back in the day a place of horror. In the 17th century, what is now, the serene place of the Prince's Street Gardens was once the site of a place called Norloch. It was a foul-smelling, man-made lake that served as a dumping ground for human and animal waste. So this stagnant body of water was formed around 1460 by King James III. It was to bolster Edinburgh's defenses and became a notorious location for executions and punishments. So it's like, if you want to get to Edinburgh, you have to go through this absolutely disgusting hellhole lake, which was like a pretty good defense. But what happened at this lake was not so great. Norloch was infamous for its association with the practice of witch dunking. Accused witches were submerged into the water, and if they floated, it seemed deemed proof of their guilt. I don't know if you've ever swam before, but you're probably going to float. So you would have been dead. This brutal method of interrogation led to numerous deaths and further cementation of the loch's grim reputation. Around 1764, they actually drained the loch. And by 1820, it was transformed into a park. And it was developed into what we now know today as Prince's Street Gardens. So as you're walking around that park and you're like, wow, it's so beautiful here. Wow, Scotland's just so gorgeous. Remember that you're walking around a lake that was filled with human shit, animal shit, just pure trash flowing through it, and a death place for so many women who were accused as witches and were drowned here. So when you're walking through that gardens, like, just think about that. Think about what you were actually walking through. On the flip side, I'm sure that is why that garden is so beautiful and green, is because it has been fed dead human bodies and human poop and human shit. So yeah, that's something. So when you go to Prince's Garden, like, I'm sure you'll think of it differently. Now let's talk about the actual witch trials. So between the 16th and 18th century, that is 2 centuries, y'all, Scotland experienced a witch hunt era during which estimated 3,000 to 5,000 individuals were accused of witchcraft. The majority of these were women, though there were men that were called wizards that were killed, but they were often targeted due to their knowledge of herbal remedies or because of personal vendettas, because honestly, back in the day, you could just call someone a witch. And before you think, oh, I would never be called a witch, let's actually go through some of the superstitions that people use to call people witches. It could be a suspicion from a neighbor. Let's say someone's crop failed, or maybe a cow died, or maybe a child fell ill, just like a bad situation, the nearest witch might be blamed because they wouldn't want to take responsibility for themselves, of course. If someone does like herbal remedies or has like a birthmark, it was called the witch's mark. So these examiners would look for blemishes, moles, insensitive skin patches where they believed they were marks where a demon sucked blood. So if you had like rosacea or like a bad acne month, that might be the end for you. Like, that's crazy. So in Edinburgh alone, over 300 people were executed just in Edinburgh. Again, most were women, and they were mostly strangled and then burned at the stake. Or again, they were doing the witch dunk, which was pretty much just drowning a person. And so it's just really crazy because when you go to Edinburgh today, everyone just thinks of like cozy cafes. They think of Harry Potter. It's just a stunning city. But back in the day, this would have been one of the most hellish places to live. So just keep that in mind when you're walking through Princess Park, that you were walking through a cemetery of dead bodies of these poor women and men who were accused of witchcraft, maybe because they had a freaking mole.
Well, that was one of the tests for witches. If you drowned, you weren't a witch. If you floated, you were a witch. But unfortunately, if you floated, then your family could also be executed as well. So you'd find, unfortunately, a lot of families would also put rocks and things into the dresses of women who were going to be tried, so they would definitely sink.
Was there any way to win in a witch trial?
No. And it was all hearsay. There was no evidence. But that was what George McKenzie thought about, is he then went on to say, there is no proof. Nobody has ever seen these accused witches of shape-shifting, changing into felines. Yeah, we've seen, basically he said we've seen some crazy behaviour from these women. That's not a thing. But it doesn't necessarily mean they have supernatural powers that can change the traverse of time and now physics. But back then, it was life. These people, it's impossible. Nobody has got solid proof to say that they can do this. And this is what he argued. But under pain, of course they're going to tell you they've got it because that's what you want to hear to stop the pain. So, yeah.
I would never want to be born then, especially in Scotland. I feel like so sick of Scotland back then. At least Edinburgh seemed like a hot, scary mess. Like you could be accused of anything at any point. And then I guess the last thing I want to end on is like the vaults that you work on at night.
Yeah.
So like that is another hot, messy time I would never want to live in. Can you explain like the vaults that you work in?
Yeah, the vaults are built within the arches of South Bridge. South Bridge connects to North Bridge, and it was built as part of the city improvement to extend the city out. And sort of mid to late 1700s, the new town was being built, so Edinburgh was expanding. But these massive valleys, either side of the Royal Mile, as you look down, you've got two valleys that come off. You've got Princes Street Gardens, and on the other side, you've got the Cowgate. So there was the choice, because in the late 1700s, we were leading the world in medicine. People from all over the world were coming to Edinburgh. We were called the Athens of the North. We were leading the world in technology, design, architecture, medicine. People were coming to the new town, and it was beautiful, beautiful townhouses and, all this lovely straight lines in the gardens in the middle, and it was all gas lighting and drainage and fucking wow. And then they went to the old town, and it was a slum, absolute slum. So when we decided, what do we do about the Cowgate? The Cowgate from the sort of mid-1700s that really got bad slum. We had the old buildings that were held up together, leaning on each other. We'd left it because all the money and business moved to the new town. So the council had two options for putting access to the medical schools and the university quad, which was going to be getting built in the south side. They could clear the Cowgate, they could make it like the new town and make it attractive and new and fresh, but that would take far too much money and far too much time. And we're Scottish, we don't like spending money because we're tyrants. So we decided instead, let's build bridges over the top of them. We'll just go right over the top and we'll just leave it. That was it. We accessed the south side. So North Bridge and South Bridge were basically built to span the two valleys over either side of the Royal Mile. So South Bridge was built between 1785 and 88. That was the structure itself. It's a massive 19-arched viaduct structure. So think of a viaduct.
Yeah.
Like in Harry Potter. Now, these arches are covered by the tenement buildings you see on either side. Because we were going to use the space, the big arches, to convert it into storage and workshops for the businesses that would be on South Bridge. and on the Cowgate level. And that extra money would then pay for the bridge, the upkeep of the bridge over the years, because it would be extra to rent this exclusive space. Brilliant idea. But we never waterproofed it because we're Scottish and we're tight arse and we've got absolutely nothing. We don't know anything about building good bridges. So it was doomed from day one. The bridge was never waterproofed. So, of course, when it started raining, the rain seeps through the road and it goes right into the vaults. And it seeps through and it makes them damp, it makes them wet. So you cannot work in these conditions and you cannot keep stock in these conditions. So the businesses quickly abandoned the vaults. And you got to remember, South Bridge is over 1,078 feet in length. It is held up by 19 massive arches. The only one you can see is at the Cowgate, where the traffic goes under it. Mm-hmm. The other 18 are concealed, and it is a massive, vast space. These arches go up to 34 feet high, 22 feet wide. They're massive. It's an underground warren of tunnels and chambers. Very easy to get lost. 3 sides, 3 levels on each side. So these are vast. So when the businesses abandoned them, that's when the illegal trades moved in, about 1800. They started, anything was legal above ground. You had prostitution, red light districts, drinking dens, gambling dens. Great. There was no police. It was pitch black. So after a time, that was fine. They did what they did. There was never enough people filling the place at that time. But then 1826, 1827, Edinburgh had a huge influx of people forced out their environments through no fault of their own. We're talking about people from Ireland and the Highlands, forced out their natural environments. They had to move to work to survive. These people had nothing, absolutely nothing. They came to Edinburgh, thousands, and there was nothing for them. The city was expanding, but these are all agricultural. Mm-hmm. There was nowhere for them to go. There was the Vagrant Act that was enforced that made it illegal to be begging on the streets of Edinburgh. If you were found to be begging, you'd be put as hard labour. You would have to go to the poorhouse and work. You wouldn't just get to lie about in a jail. Yeah, so that's when word got around these chambers beneath South Bridge were empty. It was shelter. Damp, dark, but it was off the streets. And that, unfortunately, is when you had people just going into these vaults to live. And that was a problem. That was cholera, was the biggest killer. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid. Wiped through thousands of people, killing them all. There was nowhere else for them to go. Disease. Wow. So that was, a lot of people lost their life in the vaults because of the conditions. Because nobody could. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's so cool.
I love it. That's where you work at night.
So that was it. Then they were sealed as part of the 1860 City Improvement Act. They were all off title deeds of the businesses. The businesses were kept, they were fine. And basically the vaults were now used as landfill. They were just sealed. And nobody was living there at that time. So nobody was sealed up alive or all that jazz. This was 30 years after people were there, Yeah. So then they were sealed until 1985. Ex-international rugby player for Scotland, Norrie Rowan, he decided to knock down some walls in a cellar of a pub, at the Tron pub at Hunter Square, and he knocked down cellar walls and he found a doorway behind the wall. So it's his property, as quite rightly. He wanted to know where this door goes. So he knocked through and he then found one of the corridors from one of the old vault systems that had been filled. And from then, he's been buying up the property at the front, knocking back, and then bringing all these vaults back to the public. And he's got a lot of the vaults. So a lot of the stuff is being commercialized into a lot of venues. And our section, which is being kept original as it was dug out. And it's a massive section of vaults we've got. And that was, we got our vaults 2009, something like that, 2009, just before then. Yeah.
I've been down there. I remember going down there.
It's pitch black. People don't realize how dark it is. If I'm doing a tour, which I don't do very often anymore, but one of the vaults upstairs, one of the big long ones, is perfect because I do it with candles. I don't have the main lights on, so I'll light the candles before the tour because it's just much more ambient. So in that vault, I'll blow the candle out completely, and you are plunged into darkness. I mean, it's pitch black. It's really sunny outside, but when you're there, people don't know how dark it is. When you close your eyes, it's darker than that. You cannot physically, with your eyes open, see your hand in front of your face. It is pitch black, and that's awesome. It's very peaceful. At 3 a.m, it's very peaceful.
Wow. I think I could be in a pitch dark room.
But you're enclosed as well in the, like I said, the smells, because you hear the drips, and it's been left as original as possible, uneven floors, everything's been left. We don't have the fake stuff, we don't have the fake lights, we don't have the movie set stuff. Places that do that, that's fine, that's what they do, they're very good at it. But it just doesn't suit us because we're a storytelling tour and our stories bring the place to life. And you don't want to counteract that by having visual, so yeah, that's why we try to keep it. And and that's what I try and explain to people. It's like when they say, well, what is there to see in the vaults? Well, absolutely nothing. Because that's how people lived in there. They had nothing. There was nothing in there for them. The businesses had already taken their stuff out. This is how they saw it. This is how they lived in it. And they didn't have anything. It wasn't open plan. So, yeah.
Wow. It's more of a feeling, I guess.
That's exactly. And again, that's why you can't portray it over, you can try and capture the ambience, but yeah, you can't get that feeling.
Wow. If someone's first time in Edinburgh, which tour would you recommend first?
The most popular one we do is the Double Dead tour. It's both of our locations in one tour. Each on individual tour, either the underground tour, which is the vaults, or the graveyard tour, our established one. They're about 1 hour and a half each.
Okay.
But the double tour is cut to just under 2 hours. So there's a kind of highlights in both tours because people can't decide. And people ask all the time, what's the best tour? So we can't answer that. It's total personal preference. There is no best anything. There's no best music. There's no best food. There's no best clothes. It's personal opinion. Same with what's the scariest tour. Again, totally different. I can't tell you be scared because you can come back to me tomorrow and say, look, I went on this tour. You told me I'd be terrified. I was actually more terrified in the toilet when I got home after the tour. They're like, so you cannot. That's why people who advertise, you'll be terrified. You can't do that because everybody is different. So it's a question you couldn't answer. What's the best tour between the two? So that's why we've done the Double Dead tour. It's both locations in one tour. It's cut down, so you don't get as much information as you would on the individual tours.
Yeah.
But you get to see both locations and you get the general gist of it. So that's the most popular tour we do, is the double tour.
I remember after the tour we went on, I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was yours, but I remember afterwards I was more creeped out because that's when your imagination starts to go and you hear all the stories and then you're having to walk back at home and it's raining. It was raining that night. And it's just that's when your imagination starts to grow more because you get to digest what you just heard, which is a lot of fucked up stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what people, and we always want people to go away with. Anybody could read your story from a book. It's not difficult, the words are there, but to relay that story and make it your own, like doing a really, really good cover song. And as soon as you hear it, you're like, I know the words to this, but it's completely changed. It's like, there's a band that did a cover of REM Losing My Religion, but they put it in an E minor key and it changed the entire song. And you're singing along, go, what is that song? That's exactly what it is. But it was, and that was their own. It was like they were telling you for the first time, and that's what we like to do. Is and so that has memories. Yeah, it makes memories for people. So each tour guide's different. We do our own style. We do it in different ways. Even having the same tour guide, a different tour, it'll be a totally different experience.
Mm-hmm. And you said y'all are the only ones with access to the McKenzie.
Yeah, I mean, you can go into Greyfriars.
Yeah.
That's the other confusion that's around is the McKenzie Mausoleum, the one that you see, the domed one. That's not the Black Mausoleum. The Black Mausoleum, where the interactions happen, is in the prison area.
Okay. That's
unfortunately people online saying, oh, this is the Black Mausoleum. People have never had access to the McKenzie Mausoleum unless they've broken in or went back or kicked the front door in. That mausoleum has never been open to the public. It's also only 8 foot by 8 foot inside. So how you get 36 people or a group of people in that mausoleum, no wonder they're passing it. They'll be on top of each other because there's no space. No. Because people who don't have access to the Black Mausoleum, the real one, that it's always been the epicenter of the thing, they will unfortunately tell you that that's the Black Mausoleum because that's in the main graveyard and it says burial mausoleum. It's not. The attacks have all been, the interactions have all been recorded in the Black Mausoleum, which is in the prison area. That is halfway down on the left-hand side. It's got nothing to do with the Mackenzies. It's nothing at all. There's no connections. We don't know why. That is the center point for it. But yeah, the center point for the McKenzie Poltergeist is in the Covenanters prison area, that we've documented it from day one. And that's where it's always been. It's never been anywhere else. So yeah, so we've got all the documentation for it from over the years, all the research. So when people come out with other podcasts who don't contact us and then start spewing the same utter nonsense that other people who don't know what they're talking about is spewing, I'm sitting here going, oh my God. And this is why I end up in Facebook jail. People send it to me going, Jamie, have you seen this? And I'm like, I don't want to see it. Don't see it.
Don't send it to me.
Because I'll have to watch it and then I'll just have to go, oh my, I can't believe you said that. No, this is not right. And then somebody tells me to go research and then I'm like, oh, I've discovered it. So
where's the book? What's the book called if people want to learn more about the McKenzie?
The book is called The Ghost That Haunted Itself by Jan Andrew Henderson. Jan still owns City of the Dead Tours. He's my boss. He was the man who started this. The book was about the very first incidences of what he then called the McKenzie Poltergeist. And how we started as a tour company and how he started us. He lives in Australia now, though, which, yeah, he can't get further away from it. No.
Yeah.
And it goes to his flat, the one at Greyfriars, well, not the flat, but the room all his research was in, burned down. That was a strange phenomenon as well. It was only one room affected the entire place. And it was almost like a spontaneous human combustion. There was a huge energy to cause a massive fireball and heat that melted stuff. But it was the only room that was touched and it extinguished itself. It was still source unknown for the fire report. It wasn't arson. It wasn't electrical. It's still unknown. But he goes into that in the book. All his research was destroyed. He still swears that it was the McKenzie Poltergeist that destroyed his research. But he had some of it backed up. But we did lose a lot of the original handwritten documentation from witnesses from the early days. Yeah.
In that building where he lived, only his place was burned?
Wasn't even his whole place. It was just that one room. Just the one room, yeah. There is a photo on Google of it, actually. He uploaded it. There's a picture of it, of his flat after the fire. Yeah, I don't know how we would find it. I've got a file somewhere.
Yeah, I would love a picture of that.
Yeah, it shows it. I mean, it was a ferocious heat. It was like spontaneous human combustion. Immense heat, powerful heat, but then it just extinguished itself. And that was an old building, and it backs onto the graveyard, and it's all wooden struck buildings. It's all wood. Mm-hmm. So how the whole place didn't go up. But yeah, that was certainly a strange phenomenon for it to happen. And yeah, but we did lose a lot of research with that.
I have one more question. I guess he went to Australia. He just up and left. But like for you, do you like to cleanse your energy after you do these tours or in these places? I guess, is that too like woo-woo?
Woo-woo. I've never. I mean, we do have people. We do have people who have come on the tours and the crystals and things like that. Let's face it. We're all on a ticking time bomb. We're all ticking time. We're all going to go someday. So yes, you know what I mean. If it hasn't killed me, I ain't going to. I think someone else is going to do that sooner than the Poltergeist. But
honestly, the ghost is not scared of you. Let's be honest.
Maybe they trust me to take care of them. Maybe that's the thing.
Like
I bring in victims. Right? That's exactly why it is. I bring in victims.
They trust me to take care of
them. Yeah. That's why it likes it.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. Do you want people to follow you anywhere, or how would people?
Yeah, it's all the ones. I mean, obviously, we do put up pictures of recent attacks and things like that. People who've been in the tours, because we get the pictures usually afterwards. People don't realize even that they're being interacted with. Suddenly they'll get back to their hotel or wherever they're going, and they're coming out the shower, and the partner goes, "Oh, what's that?" I'm like, what? And you can't see it on their back, and there's suddenly 3 big scratch marks right down their back. So. We try and put up as mixed pictures and things as we can. Some of the older pictures are certainly on our social media, like Facebook and cityofthedeadtours.com for the information, and obviously our social media is on City of the Dead Tours. Yeah.
Can people request just you after listening to this podcast? They're like, I want Jamie to do my tour.
Yeah, but my Instagram is Instagram's on it's Rialto Jamie, actually, as my wife and I were married. And we were married in Venice. But yeah, I've got quite. But I take a lot of photographs, photography. So I do a lot of photographs. So yeah, there's a lot of the graveyard actually, a lot of the vaults on my it's public. It's Rialto Jamie on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's I picture me with my tour stuff. I think like possible. But yeah, it's relative.
Photos are crazy. The photos y'all have on your Instagram of the bruises, that's insane.
Well, yeah. But most of the sort of, well, I can't say professional looking because I do it as a hobby, but most of the sort of graveyard ones, the vaults ones that I take myself. But yeah, on my page, I do a lot of photography around Scotland, things like that. So there's a lot of people like the Scottish and photography. That's what I do it as a hobby. So.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going through the Instagram. Well, we'll leave all that in the show notes, and that way,
I'll send you a link direct to mine after, and I'll fire you an email with it. So
perfect. Thank you so much.
Try to get over 1,000 people, followers on Instagram.
We can do that.
We are an influencer.
Yeah, ghost influencer. If you want to actually do a tour with Jamie, he works with City of the Dead tours. And so I'll leave everything below if you want to contact Jamie or if you actually want to take a City of the Dead tour. So I highly recommend checking that out. Also, if you follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is @CultureCultShow. I actually am going to post photos of what Jamie was talking about, of what happens on their tour, of, people getting scratched and bruised. And he sent me a whole file of it. So I will actually post it on my Instagram if y'all are interested to actually see some of the photos. Just follow me on @CultureCultShow. And also you should just follow me in general on there because I post all my travel stories on there too. Currently I'm in Mexico. And if you actually want to see my Day of the Dead experience, I'm going to be posting that on my Instagram. And if you like funny memes, yeah, that's kind of what I post on my Instagram. So anyways, if you want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is @CultureCultShow. If you want to see, some of those creepy ass pictures Jamie took of people's scratches and bruises. And if you just want to follow my nomadic life and look at some memes and have some fun daily memes, yeah, follow me. So to end the episode, me and Julia, my cousin, are actually going to tell a couple of our own ghost stories, including a little girl that Julia used to follow around as a kid. Let's do it.
Well, honestly, the fact that imagine you talk to a man and maybe what if he's not homeless anymore? Imagine that got him out of being homeless. But imagine you just meet someone and they're like, yeah, I think I started a chain of reactions and literally made an entire haunting happen. And you're like, what?
Sorry. It's just for me, it's the visual. I know this is fucked up because clearly no one would want to ever sleep in a grave unless they were desperate. But just the visual falls through the floor, lands in 300-year bones, and then the coffin falls on top.
I'm surprised he didn't die in there, with all the stuff on him.
How traumatizing afterwards. He's like, what the fuck just happened to me?
That's definitely a scene of a movie where, Indiana Jones movie where something goes wrong, and it always does. I don't know. But that was very movie scene to start a poltergeist. Someone should actually make a movie of that poor homeless man's.
But how did he get out? There's a casket on you. You're surrounded by bones. You're fell through the floor.
If that happened to me, that would scare the shit out of me, and I'd be desperate enough to figure myself a way to get out. So I'm sure he had a panic attack and probably jumped the height of how much he fell.
I was like, this is ridiculous. You fall through the floor, then the casket falls you, and then you start a string of events of hauntings for the next 20 years.
Which one of this, he doesn't even know this probably happened too.
No, he probably just was I don't want to think about that night ever again.
He was traumatized. What's most crazy about it is he never, Jamie never is afraid of them. He's never experienced it. He's seen people experience, but he's never experienced it. And I think that's really cool because I imagine people really trying to okay, the shirt in the background is now reminding me of a ghost, and I'm
looks like sorry, I have my robe hanging.
It looks like something that would happen in The Conjuring, and the demons about to come out there. I'm like, Marie.
It looks like a cartoon ghost is behind me.
No, but I think it's so interesting because you hear so many stories where they're like, I've witnessed, I've done this. And he's like, no, I just thought it was interesting. And I think that makes it a little more believable because he's like, I haven't experienced it. I'm not afraid of them, but I know people who have, and I still believe in them because I know it's possible. So
yeah, I respect that because a lot of times people are like, well, I've never seen one.
Yeah.
First of all, when he said he was a drummer, I was like, I see it.
I do too. It's the mustache.
Drummers are the coolest. That makes sense. He's a drummer ghost hunter that also believes in ghosts but doesn't need to see one. He's
I do wish he did have a scary story, like a terrifying story, but we should have asked him what is the most like terrifying aftermath of one of the people that were on his tour. Those scratches are like real, like the bruises and everything are crazy if you looked at them.
I guess like that's what I was saying. He seems like such a strong-willed, like secure person that it doesn't seem like the ghosts fuck with him. But if you are a little sensitive, then they attack you.
I think it also goes back to the fact that he is feeding them metaphorically. He's giving them the ghosts, and they're like, well, we're not going to fuck with someone who is doing this for us. He's like our bro, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But also the crazy part where how he was saying his boss's apartment, the room that he had all the information about the ghost caught on fire.
Yeah, that's insane. It goes to show that like people are like, oh, well, you had proof and then it went away because you're blaming it on a ghost. It's like, no, like ghosts are like they don't want to come out. They want you to think they're not real in some senses. And having that burned down, only that specific room, his house should have burned down.
He said it was all wood. The house was made of wood.
Yeah, so the entire house should have burned down if that one room caught on fire. How did it snuff itself out and start in that room?
And then also, he must have been so terrified that he literally left to Australia, which is the furthest place he could be from like the UK. I'm not saying that's the whole reason, but that's pretty crazy that he like left.
Australia is more terrifying than ghosts. Have you seen the animals?
I've been there.
There exactly.
So scary.
I don't know what type of life he wanted to live over there. Wasn't better. You know?
I just thought that was so crazy that he got interested in the project, but then the project was kind of the reason he had to leave his own hometown.
I think it's crazy that he wrote the book. So clearly he was interested enough to write this book. But like, I don't know. I think it's insane that, yes, he moved, but he wrote this book and it was so compelling that I think he probably scared himself in a sense too.
Also, I don't want to leave this episode not talking about the fucked up teenager who...
Okay, yeah, what?
Broke down the door and then severed a corpse's head.
I wonder if he got arrested. I really hope he did. He kept saying, like, even though that happened, and yes, it triggered the chain of events that happened on the other side, where the prison yard was, because every time something messed up happens there, it triggers the prison. I'm surprised that whoever's head got severed off, how did they not come back and beat this child up? Like they ruined the homeless man's sleep, but they didn't ruin this child's life.
So I'll never get over the homeless man. No, it's just like, what a poor guy.
Like the homeless man got such a dirty like moment, and then this kid comes in and kicks around a head like a soccer ball after cutting it off, and they're like, oh no, leave him be. He should have been slapped in the face by a ghost. At least a scratch, like honestly.
But that just goes to show UK teenagers are fucking terrifying.
They're actually evil.
Literally. Those are the poltergeists. Right? When he said, as like a 15-year-old little punk broke in and then severed a head.
Also, did he bring a sword? Like what? This isn't a fully decomposed body. He took a head that still had skin and hair on it, which I think is even more disgusting and creepy. And this kid was so messed up, clearly, that he was perfectly fine touching, one, a body, two, it not fully decomposed and kicking it around and cutting it off.
That was super interesting. I remember when I went on my tour, I was very shocked. And honestly, most of the stories that were messed up about Edinburgh weren't even the ghost stories. It was what actually happened in that town, mainly to the people who were all witches. Like, if you lived in Edinburgh from like any time, probably up to like 1920, it was terrifying.
I just like the witch trials are so messed up because everyone was a witch. You had your period, you were a witch. You're like, okay, you defied a man. You said no to a man. Witch. It was like you couldn't do anything right.
Let's be honest, we would be killed.
Oh, I would be killed 100%. I'm way too sassy for that.
That's the thing, is you're not safe. Like back then, you're not safe from anything. Like Edinburgh was so
you had
scary.
to be. If I was alive back then, the first way I would probably go is illness or being literally burned at the stake.
Yeah.
I would die from like a cough, or I would die from being burned. Like
There's just no way around it. Like, I really recommend for anyone who goes to Edinburgh to definitely do one of these tours, especially like City of the Dead. I wonder if I even took their tour because we went down into the vaults and it was actually, I understood what Jamie was
Turn
saying.
off the lights.
Yeah, they did. And I remember it, I also found it kind of peaceful. But then I was creeped out because I was like, guys, the only way we came in was the only way we can come out. And it's a tiny spiraling staircase. And I remember it was very peaceful down there. I felt more creeped out in the graveyard, can't lie. It was raining and they told some really messed up stories in the graveyard. The one, I'll tell one real quick. I'm sure if Jamie listens to this, he's like, shut the fuck up. Jamie, correct me, please. But I'm going to tell the story real quick. Hire me for City of the Dead.
Or not if she sucks, but yeah.
Okay. Listen to me, my child. Anyways, so we went to one of the graveyards and there was this beautiful, like almost big manor that overlooked the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
And Grace doesn't remember the story, but I do. So this graveyard was owned by like one of the government officials and they had a child. I think he was probably retarded. Sorry if that's not the politically correct term, but he was.
Stay on the spectrum or something.
But he wasn't. He was, okay. He was not all there. And they, it's like the worst. Okay.
Not coming out the right word. He was retarded.
Yeah. Jamie's already fired me.
Something better. He was not all there.
I'm already fired. Okay. So he's not all there. And they keep him in the dungeon for most of his life. They keep him.
That's why he's not all there.
In the dungeon. So there's one night and it's a big party. And I guess there's some big event that's happened in Edinburgh. They're going to celebrate. And they had this massive party. And all the government officials are there. And while all these people are partying, they have no idea there is a child in the dungeon that's been living there his whole life. And so at one point, they all go outside for fireworks. And so everyone goes outside there. Well, someone had left the key and the boy found the key. And he found the key and he finally released himself. And he gets up to the top of the party and he sees another boy his age who was actually a servant. And this is where I think this could be bullshit. But apparently when everyone came back into the house, the servant boy was skewered on a stick, roasting over the fire instead of the pig that was there before. And it was the not all the way there boy who did it.
If you were stuck in a dungeon for all your life and people were being annoying, wouldn't you want to kill the first person you saw?
Yeah, probably. But skewered on a stick is pretty crazy. Like,
yeah, that's a little excessive.
And also, like, how long were they out there?
Yeah, yeah, to get him on the stick. Also, if he was been in a dungeon his whole life, how would he know how to put someone on a stick skewer?
Do you?
I don't even know how to put vegetables on a skewer, so no.
But that's the story that I remember that creeped me out. And then one other thing that is it's not just with Edinburgh, but back in the day, they didn't really know if you were dead, but they would, if you kind of died, they would just assume so because they probably didn't want disease to be running around. So they would bury you, but when they bury you with a string and the string connects to a bell.
Yeah.
And
they had those in Savannah. I used to hear them ring.
Yeah. Yes. And so that was creepy. And remember when we went to Savannah and I was like making fun of all the ugly headstones and then we heard a bell?
Dude, me and your mom heard a bell in Savannah. I looked at your mom and I was like, do you hear that? And we heard a bell and I was like, I think it's time for us to go.
So that was something also that creeped me out. But I highly recommend doing one of these tours. I love Edinburgh. It is the most coziest, creepiest little town. And y'all should go do a tour with Jamie because he's like the OG. He's a cool drummer who is going to take you to get scratched.
And maybe you'll see Stefano, Emma's pet rat that used to live in her apartment. He's roaming the streets of Edinburgh.
Do you have your own ghost story?
I can tell you the one that always creeps most people out, or they kind of go together, but most people get creeped out when I tell this one. So basically, when we first moved to Texas, we lived in this house and I was in the biggest room. I was in the room that used to be a basement but got converted into a room. And when I moved into this room, I completely hated it to the point where I never felt safe. I slept with the lights on. I couldn't fall asleep. I always felt very haunted in there. To the point where I also used to sleep on the floor of Emma's bedroom because that felt safer than being in my room.
Damn, she wouldn't let you sleep in the bed?
No, it's Emma. You've met her.
That's fucked up. Okay, continue.
Like we've met Emma. We know she would not allow me to sleep in the bed. I had to fight her on sleeping the floor. Like, like please. She was like, no. So that's a little preface of what I used to feel in this room. Now, a while ago, we were talking about like my experiences with ghost and everything, because I was telling Emma about it, and my mom was like, "Oh, that's interesting, because when you were a little kid and we were at this house, there was one night where you came. I can't remember if I came into my mom's room or my mom like somehow was up and she saw me and I was wandering around the house, and I think it was I was up and I was wandering around and she like saw me." And she was like, "What are you doing up? Like, what's going on?" And I apparently said the words, "I was following the little girl." And my mom, this is why I think I'm also I was in their room. I think my mom was like, "What are you doing? What's wrong?" And I just said, "I was following the little girl." And my dad, apparently, both of them went silent. And my dad goes, "Ignore her." he goes, "Ignore her. She's sleepwalking. Put her in the bed." Such a Stephen thing to say, to like to just question it and then be like, "No, not tonight. Ignore it."
That's creepy as fuck, though.
So, and then, but I don't remember it. My mom clearly remembers it because she was like, "Yeah, I couldn't go to sleep after that."
Ew, you're following the little girl?
Yeah, I said I was just following the little girl, and honestly, it makes sense because that house, my room, creeped me out. Like, I never felt good. Even thinking about that room right now is giving me chills, because the deep darkness and scariness I felt in that room, there was something not right. There was something not right in it.
Did you look into the history of the house that I've ever? No. We should.
We should. I'll ask the name, because that would be interesting, because I don't know what the history is. All I know is that room felt like it was a portal into something, and it wasn't right.
And he did say like, what it said, ages of like 10 to 15. How old
I was around that age. I was in that age range.
That's when all my ghost experiences happened, actually, when I was like 11.
But I have a weird thing with little girls for some reason. Like, even when I was in France, I saw, I was alone in my room. I saw a little girl sitting on the bed, and I did the Stephen moment where I looked at her and I was like,
"Wait, in the France house?"
Not in the France house, honey. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
France house is safe. It only has the little rodents that are living in the attic.
Okay, it's fine.
We love them. But no, and when I was at boarding school, I was in my boarding house. And this one I find a little creepier, because I was in my boarding house. I saw a little girl sitting on my roommate's bed, and I just looked at her, and she was just watching me sleep. I didn't feel any bad vibes, which is why I think I was okay with doing it. I just kind of saw her and I was like, "No." And I turned around and went back to bed. And I told my friend about it in the morning. She goes, "Oh, well, actually, that's a thing. Like, this house is haunted. People seen a lot of the little girl because she died right outside your room." And I was like, "Hey, could have lived without that information, but it's fine."
Well, that makes sense. Maybe that was actually a ghost, and the one in the Austin house was a poltergeist, because he talked about the energy is different between the two.
I think the energy was different. That house was just, whatever was in that room, it felt like a different energy. It didn't feel like, it just felt wrong. I don't know.
That is so fucking, yeah, little girls. That's so creepy. I'm not going to do my whole story, because I've told them before, but the first one was definitely a poltergeist, because my shoes were lifted and thrown, which means I feel like that's energy.
Where?
This was in my middle school. My middle school, which is a completely new middle school, but my shoes in gym class in the locker room were thrown, lifted up and thrown by nothing.
Scary.
And slammed against the lockers. And that's why I was like, okay, that's probably a poltergeist. And the other one I saw was someone just like running through the hall in my cousin's house, and it ran through the wall, which I think is a ghost.
Yeah.
So that was like so cool to learn about that. Because that makes a lot of sense why. The other one was definitely scary, because I definitely saw it, and a person running that was scary as shit. So anyways, I would like go ahead and DM me. And if y'all have ghost stories, or if y'all been to Edinburgh, like I would love to know, because I love Edinburgh.
Or even just tour stories that y'all have experienced that really like you felt it was real. Yes. Honestly.
Yeah. So my Instagram's at Culture Cult Show. My email is culturecultshow@gmail.com. Email me anything about Edinburgh, tours, ghosts. We want it. And reach out to Jamie if you are wanting to actually learn more about the poltergeist. And if you want to actually do a tour with him, because he's a badass. He's a badass drummer that is awesome. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed that episode. And yeah, I would love to know if y'all have your own ghost stories. Like, just hit me up. My Instagram's at Culture Cult Show. I love a ghost story. And before we go, I just wanted to shout out today's country who is listening. This is actually a newer listener, but Brazil. Oh my God. Hey, I love that you're listening. I haven't had that many South American listeners, so I'm really freaking excited that like I've broken into South America finally. Thank you so much for listening. I don't know how you found this podcast, but that's awesome that you're listening. And I feel like I want to maybe say a fun fact about Brazil. I think I'm going to start doing that, just saying like fun facts about the countries that are listening. Apparently, you'll have like a giant rodent invasion of capybaras. They're the world's largest rodent, apparently. And they're just chilling in the parks and like everyone loves them. I would love to know if that's true, that if you as a Brazilian like your capybaras. I feel like I'm saying that wrong. And the other fun fact is that we can thank Brazil for our motherfucking oxygen. The Amazon rainforest in Brazil produces 20% of the world's oxygen. That's crazy. So shout out to y'all for having really cool and chill capybaras and giving us oxygen. Thank you, Brazil. I wonder what you think about Scotland, because I feel like Scotland's so different from Brazil. So I'd love to know what you think about this episode. Thank you guys for listening. I hope y'all aren't too creeped out. I suggest maybe watching an episode of Gilmore Girls or Golden Girls or just any girl show to kind of fucking, yeah, this is a little bit heavy episode. But coming up, the next Scottish story we're getting into is the tragedy of Mary, Queen of Scots. Y'all want to talk about telenovela? This chick, Mary, Queen of Scots, I really got her story wrong. I thought she was kind of like this Catholic freak. Oh my God, no. She did the most she could in those years that she lived on this earth. So that'll be our next Scottish story. So until then, thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate y'all for showing up every few weeks to come listen to the podcast. And if you liked this episode and you know someone who likes ghosts, go ahead and send them this episode. Okay, cheers, y'all.